You're not, you have to stand in the shot of the camera, so he's not just looking at the whiteboard.
No, he's going to be looking at a whiteboard. All right, hey. All right, so a couple things. Let's start with 3 questions. See what you can come up with. How did North America get people? Okay? How'd they get here? When they get here? Can you describe these people? Can you tell us about them? How'd they live? And then when we get to the issue of Europeans discovering North America, who were some of the indirect discoverers of North America? Some of the factors that led to the European discovery of North America. Does that make sense? Do you want this? Wants like some scratch paper to work with? And I told them, I don't know. You know, again, I don't know where people are, what they need, what they want. I didn't think I would just stand here and go over notes per se. So, but this is, you know, if after today we're like, yeah, this didn't work, and we didn't do this, you know, maybe we should do X differently. Then you know, we'll talk about it. I don't think it's a theory.
You're talking about the land bridge? Well, you're talking about like when everything was together, like Pageant.
No, you're talking about the land bridge. You're talking about the land bridge.
Like from Russia to like Alaska?
Yeah, that must
That's
be
the
it.
land bridge. That's okay.
What time period are you looking
Was it like,
for? Like,
is it like 30,000 BC?
Yeah, that's about right. Do you mean for the indirect discoverers?
No. I don't know what I mean, for the people that you want us to describe, like, do you want us to describe progression? Or like,
Well, sure. What were they like when they got over here? And what can you tell us about them? Obviously, they start to become very diverse and complex, but maybe you can get into that a little bit. What did things look like in 1492 in terms of the native populations, to the extent that you can remember that? Oh, the snow stopped. It almost looks like it's raining.
It's supposed to freezing like this.
Oh, that's nice and safe. Something wet hit me. I'm not sure what it was. You guys, should we kick this around? All right. How did people get to North America?
there's no land bridge?
There's a land bridge, right? So it's important, I think, to note that life does not originate in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, I don't know about life, but I mean, humans did not evolve in the Western Hemisphere. They didn't originate in the Western Hemisphere. So they come from where?
Well, there's
Asia.
Africa.
Yeah, originally Africa.
Well, right.
But
the-
Asia and areas of Russia, and they come across the land bridge. And
Okay. So there's a land bridge. And where's this land bridge?
It's like from Russia to Alaska.
Across what would now be the Bering Straits. And why was there a land bridge? What happened?
Ice Age.
Ice Age.
Which caused what?
The glaciers to Is it glaciers or just ice like up?
As the ice freezes, the sea levels go down. And there's a lot of moisture in these glaciers and ice. And so the sea levels go down, and that reveals the land bridge. And it's there for thousands and thousands of years. Now, as the Ice Age ends, about 10, 12,000 years ago, and the ice melts and the sea levels rise, the land bridge disappears 10,000 years ago. But the people start crossing that land bridge as, I think, as early as no, 35,000, so 33,000 BC. So who are these people? What are they like?
It said that they're nomadic hunter-gatherers.
Good, they're nomadic hunter-gatherers. Well, no one had a great level of technology, I guess, 33,000 years ago. But they're hunter-gatherers. What happens to them when they get into North America and when they get into the Western Hemisphere?
Well, I mean, they spread out and they form really diverse societies. You have the ones in like Central and South America that come up with really advanced civilizations, and then you have others in Northern America that continue to be nomadic hunter-gatherers.
Right.
Others that form semi-agrarian societies.
Right. Good. That's an excellent answer. You've got Mexico City, which rivals European cities. I mean, it's a mind-blowing civilization, and you've got the Incas in Peru that also build these amazing cities and tremendous engineering feats. And then you've got hunter-gatherers that are basically living like they lived Stone Age cultures, with not much technology at all. Okay, a lot of them were organized along matrilineal lines. Now, I don't know that the text talks about that much, but in some of the review material, what's matrilinear mean?
Based on their mothers.
Based on their mothers. So, as opposed to in our society where your name and so forth, it's patrilineal. The Native American societies tended to be matrilineally organized, and women played a really big role in these organizations. How about government-wise? How are all these various tribes? How are they organized?
Usually it's really by age, right? Like, how elder most people are.
Is there a strong government form per se? No, it's very decentralized. It's, you know, and Maddie said a lot of different tribes. I mean, the text says over 2,000 separate languages. It's a lot of separate languages. Many diverse religions, cultures, ways of life. The Plains Indians, the Northeast Woodlands. You get down to the desert area, and the Navajos living in, these cave cities. I don't want to call them cave cities, adobe dwellings. Okay, good. How about some of the indirect discoverers of North America?
Marco Polo.
And who's he, and why is that significant?
He supposedly went to China. Now, I guess there isn't a whole lot of evidence of that, but he wrote about it, and everybody was like, "Oh, China!" So they wanted another route to get there that was faster.
And what's significant about China and Asia, the Orient? What's
trade? The spices.
Yeah, there's spices. There's also Chinese silk. I mean, there are goods there that when they reach Europe, the Europeans are like, wow, this is really, the Europeans don't have these spices. They don't have some of these delicacies. I shouldn't say delicacies, the spices. And, silk is something that was made in the Orient. They didn't have this in Europe, wearing itchy wool in Europe. Some other indirect discoverers. The Vikings, right? I mean, it's pretty clear there's definitely evidence that Scandinavian explorers got here, maybe even set up some small colonies. Now, why aren't they all that significant in the story? And they may have done this as early as 1,000 years ago. Why didn't they really? Why doesn't that take off?
So they stick up like to northern Canada.
Yeah, it didn't seem like they came in very far, and they didn't really. They didn't popular. I mean, they didn't make known what they had discovered. They didn't really, and of course Europe's very different at this time than it is 1492. But yeah, it's just not something that's widely known. So the Italians and the Spanish and the Portuguese in the 1400s, they're not really aware that Vikings had actually been over there 400 years, 500 years prior. It wasn't like, hey, we got to go where the Vikings went. No, they didn't. That wasn't what they were thinking.
Vikings were more villagers, weren't they? In Rome?
They were, but I mean, they went to, Greenland and Vinland. I mean, these areas were they get into the whole pillaging thing. Population changes, and they just saw an opportunity, But they think there was a certain amount of agriculture and some other indirect discoverers. What about the Crusades? Similar to Marco Polo, really. I mean, these Western Europeans from Britain, from France, from Spain, from the German areas, they travel to what we call the Middle East now. They travel to what they call the Holy Land, we'd say be Israel today, and they come into contact with Islamic culture, and the Islamic Caliphate at that point stretched into Asia, and so they had trade with the Middle East, or they had trade with China and India, and so they're much closer to the source of this rich trade, and this gets them thinking, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could get silk and spices like those Arab dudes have got. Talk to me about Europeans in Africa. Doesn't play a huge role here, but there is a little bit about it.
They don't start colonizing Africa until like way later. Isn't it just like
They set up ports along the coast, and
Right.
there's some
Yep.
Dutch trade there.
And in particular the Portuguese.
Yeah.
And the Portuguese attempt to check it out here at a visual. The Portuguese start to move from Portugal, trying sail south, and they're trying to get to the Orient. And again, they have no, obviously no satellites. They have no idea how far this is going to be. One of the things that's occurring is the advances in Western European maritime technology are significant. And the old, like you read about the Romans, they never really, the Mediterranean was sort of like a lake for them, and they literally, at times, rather than transport troops across, they just marched around it. You get into the 1400s, and the caravel, that was another important term. The caravel is a pretty seaworthy vessel. And they've got the skill, these Western European seafarers, they're learning how to navigate, they're learning how to navigate with the stars, and they're able to go much further with these vessels, and in all different conditions. Eventually, the Portuguese make it around the Horn of Africa and get over to India and ultimately China and Asia, and open up a trade route. Now, I guess I'm taking this out of order. So what's Columbus's? So why don't the Spanish do that? So the Portuguese kind of get this route opened up. Why does Columbus decide?
Because don't they think like the world's flat? Is the world so flat at this point? Or no? Like at this point in time, do they still think the world's flat?
This is being recorded, you realize?
I'm sorry.
I don't know this kid. He doesn't know this. You don't get it.
YouTube.
Oh, was that the one we passed?
Yeah.
Oh, oops. Sorry.
One of the reasons that the Spanish don't go this way is because the Portuguese got there first, and the Portuguese set up ports and alliances and so forth. So it's sort of a Portuguese route, and it's going to be hard for the Spanish to go that way. Columbus does think the world's probably round now.
Wait, don't they think that there's nothing like to the west, so if they go that way, they just go with them? I read that somewhere.
Well,
They don't know there's a whole
Right.
continent.
Exactly.
They just think it's ocean and they'll get there quicker.
Yeah. In Columbus, and there's dispute about what, I think some educated people did kind of have the sense that the world was probably round, but they didn't know that North America was there. So he's thinking he's going to sail west, and he's going to strike China, because he's going to get into the Orient that way. And again, he's got by 1492 the Western nautical maritime technologies has come along somewhat. So he's going to try to go west. You get into European history. 1492 is a significant year in Spanish history. It's the end of the Reconquista. I think that's probably a term you should know. What was the Reconquista?
They threw out the Moors.
Who were they?
They were Northern Africans or something?
No. The they that you...
The Spanish.
Okay, all right. Just precision. You're kind for precision. Yes, the Spanish Christians. Beginning in about 700, the Islam spreads phenomenally rapidly, beginning in the 7th century. By the 8th century, it's actually expanded into Spain, and much of Spain is ruled by Muslims, by North African Arabs known as the Moors. And the Spanish resist, and there's something called the Reconquista, which is it's hundreds and hundreds of years that it takes the Spanish Christians to eventually drive the Moors out. And they drive them in 1492. And so when that's done, the Spanish king and queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, they've got some extra money. I mean, they've got, they're no longer fighting this war, this lengthy war to drive these invaders out. I mean, they've been there for 700 years, but you know what I'm saying. So when Columbus is pitching, hey, here's what I want to do. They're like, well, yeah, we could afford that. We could support it. We could sponsor a cheap vessel in use. And so that's part of the deal. Sorry. This camera thing makes me feel, I don't know. I gotta watch what I say. I'm gonna be very careful what I say. Garrett Dewald is the devil.
It'd be funny if I said
That sounded really. I think your cup picked up some of your sound. That was creepy.
That wasn't my voice. That was clearly was not me. That was something else. That was Nash. Nash, quit using those voices. Darn it, we're trying to study here. All right, so there's Columbus. Let's talk about, in general, the Columbian Exchange. Why don't you guys, can you jot down, what's the Columbian Exchange? What are some things that, well, what is it, and then what's it involve? What's it entail? Jedi mind tricks going on. Columbian Exchange.
It says ice. It's Greenland. Greenland. Sorry, it's Greenland.
Didn't say anything. All right, Columbian Exchange. What's going on here?
It's like
Colombian drug cartel deals or what? What is this?
it's like the trading of the goods with like the North Americans was like the original mashup of the cultures.
Okay, I mean that's part of it. Now, I think when they talk about the Columbian Exchange, they're not talking about a transaction so much. Hey, how you doing?
Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right. Come when you can, stay till whenever you can. That's fine. They're talking about the transfer of certain things from one continent to the other. So, for example, what does North America gain in this Columbian Exchange? What are some crops? All right. Smallpox is something, right?
That's all I think of.
Well, you got a bumper crop of smallpox this year.
Horses, other
Horses?
livestock.
Sugar.
Livestock, sure. Horses, pigs, cows, these are not creatures that are indigenous to North America or South America for that matter. So it's the diseases of Europe: smallpox, measles, the plague, influenza, typhus, diphtheria, scarlet fever. None of which then the Indians have antibodies for, right? I mean, you've got the Black Death that goes through Europe several times and, you know, it kills off a third of the Europeans. Well, guess what? The ones that remain have got immunities to that disease. And, you know, when the Europeans show up carrying some of these diseases, the native peoples do not have immunity, and this is what wipes them out. Wheat, sugar, rice, and coffee, those are old world crops. What does the old world, what does Europe and the, you know, the Orient and so forth, what does it get from the New World?
Don't they get like corn and stuff?
Okay, corn is an important crop. It's the mainstay. No, that's from the old world.
Isn't it like
Corn,
tomatoes?
tomatoes, potatoes, which becomes a mainstay in the diet of a lot of Europeans, Germans and Irish. Pineapples, tobacco. You know, again, I always like to tell a joke that tobacco, it's New World. You know, Jesus and the apostles weren't sitting around smoking cigarettes at the Last Supper. They didn't have tobacco. I don't know why I think that's funny. It just appeals to my sense of the absurd. Tobacco, beans, vanilla, and chocolate. Now, also, there was gold in the old world, obviously, and silver, right? Judas, 30 pieces of silver. But with the Spanish find in Mexico and in South America, they find significant deposits of gold and silver, and they bring a lot of that's brought back into the European economy. Syphilis is the disease that comes from the New world into the old world. Now, what's the last thing that the Europeans bring with them? And it's significant for basically for the islands, for the Caribbean islands, west.
Slaves.
Slaves, yeah, and again, the natives die off like crazy. The natives, a lot of the native tribes, they don't have any resistance, and they're difficult to enslave for a number of reasons, which we'll talk about later. And so they feel that the Europeans feel that if they're going to get people to work for them, they're going to exploit people, the easiest thing to do is to take Africans and bring them. And that's what they do. So that's how we get slave labor. All right. Can we talk quickly about, can you guys talk about the different conquistadors? What are some names you should know? I'll throw some out there. You tell me what they are. Cortez, Cabrillo, Coronado, Balboa, Tordesillas. Some names you should know. Cortez, you know Columbus.
Yeah.
Cortez, Cabrillo, Coronado, Balboa, Tordesillas. Is that?
How do you spell the last one?
Tordesillos. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it right. I could be giving it a French pronunciation. Wasn't that a bike race, the Tour de Sioux? No, it's Tour de France. Never mind.
Oh, it's definitely Spanish.
Thank you, Nash, for laughing at my stupid Tour de France, Tour de Sioux joke.
You are saying.
You just right in my grill today, aren't you? You just right in my grill walker. It's a good thing you're not in arm's distance there, because I'm cuffing you.
No, you won't.
All right, man, I wouldn't be. I'd be doing this. All right, so who are these people? Who is Cortez? He's important. You really got to know him.
Was he in Mexico? Was he?
Yes, Hernan Cortez takes down the Aztec Empire. I mean, he's significant. And the Aztec leader was?
I don't know how to pronounce the name. It's
Montezuma.
okay.
Montezuma.
Yeah.
Montezuma. And he's an important name. So Cortez and his, and what do we call people like Cortez? He's a conquistador, right? He's a conquistador. He's a conqueror. Who was Cabrillo? That's a name that I frankly hadn't remembered until I read the chapter. Actually, when I was on Grocket the other day, I got a question about him, and I guessed I got it right, but I didn't really know. But Cabrillo is the Spanish explorer that goes up the coast of what's now California, and he founds a lot of the missionaries there. So he's the sort of the Spaniard that is responsible for California. Hey. Before you sit down, you need to say something derogatory and or negative about Garrett D. Wolf.
And very loud.
Real loud.
Not here.
What's that?
What?
No, he's not here, but we're talking about him, and we want to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
Wuss. How's Coronado?
What's the word seas?
Just talk to the Spanish, not me.
First.
Columbus, Cortez, Cabrillo. No, senor, you cannot be a conquistador unless your last name begins with C. Okay.
I think wouldn't they respond with C?
I don't know.
C.
Maybe his name was Nicklaus. He was a Germanic conquistador wannabe. Listen, German white trash. Go back to Switzerland. All right. Okay.
Alex Francisco Pizarro.
All right. Let's talk Pizarro. Who's Pizarro? Do not say he was Pizarro, because that's not. Who?
I'm having trouble finding
Now, I don't know that they're going to ask you about Pizarro, because Pizarro is the conquistador that's associated with the destruction of the Inca, the conquest of the Inca in South America. I don't know that there are that many questions about the South America, but Pizarro is he's the conquistador that does that. Coronado is the conquistador who explores a lot of the Southwest. So Colorado is actually partly named for Coronado. So he gets around to those different New Mexico, Arizona, parts of Texas. That's where Coronado explores. And there's a large landmass there that he attempts to explore and map. Finally, Balboa. And we're not talking Rocky here. Yeah. Unless you've seen the movie, I guess that would be easy. Balboa. He's the conquistador. He basically is the first to get to the Pacific side of North America, the Pacific coast. He's the first one to get to the Pacific. He names the Pacific, I think. It's the waters he sees are not as violent and difficult as the Atlantic, and so he uses the Spanish word for peaceful, Pacifico, and he calls it the Ocean Pacifica, the Pacific Ocean. I tried to be very Pacific in that answer for you guys. You guys are a tough crowd. I'll tell you what. Man. Right. What was Tordesillas?
Was he Florida?
Ooh, I have caught you on a.
It's a treat.
Yes, slew hockey. The Treaty of Tordesillas, which was what? A treaty between.
Isn't it the Portugal and Spain?
Right, and the Pope's involved in this. Again, Spain and Portugal are two Roman Catholic powers. Do you remember this?
It like splits up.
Exactly, and they're trying to. He would like to keep these two Iberian Catholic powers from fighting with each other. So they try to divide North America into a Spanish region and into a Portuguese region. What's modern day Brazil was settled by the Portuguese, and it's still that's their principal language is Portuguese, and then just about everything to the west of that is Spanish, and Spain's got the right to settle it and colonize it and so forth. So Mexico, all of Central America, and the rest of South America are going to be colonized by the Spanish, and they speak Spanish to this day. All right, so Treaty of Tordesillas. Let's talk about the English. So the Spanish start discovering and colonizing 1492. Cortez is 1517, I think. When do the English get involved in the game?
Then they try to in Roanoke in like the 1500s.
Yeah, they do. They attempt to colonize in, I think it's the 1580s. And the first colony, Roanoke, is not successful. And it just, disappears, and they don't. And again, the textbook goes into some detail. The British, that was anachronistic. The English are fighting the Spanish at this point. The Spanish Armada is 1588. And England is not all that. Spain is very powerful at that point, and England just doesn't have the resources to mount colonial endeavors on the scale that the Spanish and the Portuguese do. What's the first permanent English settlement in North America? Jamestown. Jamestown, Virginia, 1607. Who settles? What's the story behind Jamestown? Who's behind it? Who or what is backing it? He's there. Yep. Is this? You used the term Virginia. See it, man. What? Where's the term Virginia come from?
I
Okay. Well, where does the name come from? Virginia.
Oh, this is Virgin Queen.
Okay, so Queen Elizabeth, who rules England 1558 to 1603, she's known as the Virgin Queen. She's unmarried, although that doesn't mean she's a virgin, but anyway. But there's a step in the middle here. So that she's known as the Virgin Queen. So how do we get this colony?
Isn't it like the Virginia company?
Yes, indeed, there is. There's a group, there's a joint stock company, and that's important. A joint stock company. A number of people form a financial institution, a financial entity, and they call it a joint stock company, where a number of people own shares, and they call it the Virginia Company. And the colony is really named after it's named after Elizabeth, but it's also that the Virginia Company's colony, they call it Virginia. How much we've basically gone you want to go 10 more minutes and then do questions online for half an hour or something like that, see how that goes? Unless it starts to drive you nuts, and then we'll do something else. All right. All right, let's talk about Jamestown. What are these people in Jamestown looking for? What are they there for? Why are these settlers here? What are they after? The English settlers in Jamestown. Gold. Yes, they're looking for gold. They want to do what the Spanish did, right? The Spanish get all this gold and silver and, cha-ching, strike it rich quick. That doesn't work out too well, right? So what do they discover instead? Which is a form of gold, I guess. Corn, okay. They do discover corn. Tobacco. They discover something that proves to be very popular in Europe, a cash crop, tobacco. They see the Indians smoking. The Indians explain to them what it is. They try it. They start shipping it back to England. It starts to become very popular. It spreads all over Europe. And people that cultivate it, and it's native to this region of the world. And so in the Chesapeake region, and that's where the Virginia colony is, in the Chesapeake region, tobacco is going to be the cash crop. It's going to be the important crop for many, many years. People make a lot of money on that.
Yeah, Jamestown wasn't too good during the first winter.
No, and talk about this. So they have good experience, bad experience?
Yeah, they apparently kept starving, and one man even killed, salted, and ate his own wife, and then was executed for doing so.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah.
He salted her, huh?
That's what it said.
Wow. I gotta say it. I gotta say it. I gotta say it. Salty.
They were reduced to eating dogs, cats, rats, and mice, and even digging up corpses for food. One hungry man killed, salted, and ate his wife, for which misbehavior he was executed.
You can't be biting on your baby. Yeah, that's
400
absolutely.
made it there by 1609, and only 60 survived.
And and I think one of the problems in Jamestown was the first people that came there were not looking. They were looking to find quick wealth. They were not thinking about planting farms, and a lot of them. There's a heavy, and this is a problem in the Chesapeake region. There's a lot of extra males, and they're not families there, and so these guys are they're walking around looking to try to get rich quick, as opposed to thinking, all right, I've got a wife and 3 kids here. I've got to get some kind of crop planted, and I need to lay in a store of supply of food for the winter. And so that's what you get in New England. In New England, the families in New England, they not that they don't have struggles, but they do better. They do well, very, very quickly. Talk to me about Let's talk about the West Indies. What's going on in the West Indies? So you've got Spanish settlers in the West Indies, you've got French, you've got English. What's the big deal in all these places? And now the tobacco's the cash crop again of the Chesapeake region. That's why Virginia and Maryland are settled.
Is it sugar?
Sugar, that's right. Sugar is correct, sweetie. All right, jeez. Walker didn't hear that one. Sugar, and so sugar cane, and again they're using African forced labor slaves, and then that distilled sugar cane, you turn it into what? Alcoholic beverage. What alcoholic beverage?
Whiskey.
Rum. Rum. That's a major product of. If you go to the U.S. Virgin Islands, that's a major product down there. They've got rum distilleries and all over the place. Now we're not going to quite get into the triangle trade yet, but obviously you're starting to get some of the elements that are going to form this triangle trade. You've got slave labor coming from Africa. You've got sugar and rum being produced in the West Indies, tobacco in the New World, and then when you get into New England, there are other things being produced. Timber and fishing is huge in New England. That's the mainstay of the economy. And then the middle colonies have got their own. It's wheat. England. Let's talk about the Indian relations between the Indians and the Europeans, the English in Virginia. How do they go?
Wasn't it like the Chesapeake had the worst though? Wasn't the Chesapeake like the worst?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fighting there. A name that you probably should know is the Indian leader Powhatan. Powhatan lived in 1607, and he led something known as Powhatan's Confederacy, a number of tribes in the Chesapeake region. He was sort of the dominant leader. Even after his death, these Indians are referred to as the Powhatan Confederacy. There's some pretty serious warfare here. You know, a series of Indian attacks left 347 dead. The Virginia Company issues new orders for a perpetual war. There's a first and second Anglo-Powhatan War, one in 1614, the second in 1644. By 1685, the English considered the Powhatan peoples extinct. Again, the natives, the diseases take them out. You can't, The other thing and it's not going to ask you this, but when you start taking out large percentages of a society, it can't operate. I mean, it's not just like, hey, we're just as good with half of us. No, chieftains are wiped out, and existing structures and families, and they really stop to function on some level. So when you see this society, these Indian societies, getting racked with these diseases, I mean, they're pretty easy pickings for the Europeans to come through and dominate them militarily. I mean, these just are not societies that are functioning at their best. They're ripe for conquest and or extermination. on that count, I just think this is fascinating. It says in the chapter here at one point that the estimates are that in 1492 there were 54 million natives in the Western Hemisphere. 54 million different Indians belonging to the various tribes, from the Aztecs to the Iroquois to the Algonquins to the Incas in South America. The figure I'd always heard, and I think is in this textbook, is that disease wipes out 90% of them, which is, it's phenomenal. I mean, it really is an extraordinary holocaust. Now, it doesn't occur quickly, it doesn't occur, but as Europeans get into these areas and as they spread these bacteria, these viruses, the Indians, they die. Horrific. Why is Maryland? What's it known for? Tobacco and Catholics. Yep, RC, Catholics. It's originally Lord Baltimore is the proprietor. He's a prominent English Catholic, and he gets a charter to set up a colony where, at a time when Catholicism ain't exactly the flavor of the month in England, Catholics can go to Maryland. All right. And again, if you have a hard time remembering that, one of the tricks is, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but in Roman Catholicism, Mary, the mother of Jesus, plays a large role, and Maryland is, got Mary in its title, Maryland. So if you can try to remember that, you can maybe associate it with the Catholicism. Are we ready for some rocket? Whoa. Now, I'm assuming he doesn't necessarily, Garrett doesn't want us to record. I mean, he can go to Rocket himself, right? So, should I just think, do you think I should kill it at this point? Anyone want to say anything to Garrett before we do so? Say goodbye.
Toodles.
Toodles. Tag, you were saying some really vicious things about him just outside of the camera a little while ago. Do you want to repeat any of those? Yeah, right. You don't know who he is. He's blonde. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, look where I am. It's the other day. Like, in my own little island. Yeah, I got you.
All right, Garrett, I hope this was useful.